Well, hello. I hope you all can hear me clearly. My name is Hillary, and I am the Africa Specialist here at Mountain Travel SOBEC. Welcome to you all. Thank you so much for joining us. Today we're going to be going over Uganda and Rwanda, and in particular, our Africa Primate Safari. And I'm very happy to introduce Tad Bradley, who is one of our colleagues from Classic Africa Safaris in Uganda, and he has a wealth of knowledge about the trip and these regions, so he will be leading our presentation today. So with that, Tad, would you like to go ahead?
Thank you, Hillary. Yes, and good morning or good afternoon, everyone, depending on where you are in the world or the country today. As Hillary said, I'm Tad Bradley. I'm the North American Marketing Director for Classic Africa Safaris. And we are Mountain Travel SOBEC's partner in Uganda and Rwanda, and we've worked with Mountain Travel now for nearly 2 decades, operating their safaris in partnership with them in Uganda and Rwanda. So thank you for taking some time out of your day today to join me for this virtual safari through Uganda and Rwanda. A short little bit about me, and then we'll get on to more interesting subjects like this trip. As I said, I handle the marketing for Classic in North America, and through my work in the safari business, I've had the really difficult job of having to visit the continent on a regular basis and go on safari a lot. So it's a tough job, I realize, but I guess I'm one of the lucky ones that gets to do it. So, but seriously, I've been lucky to travel to a lot of countries and destinations throughout Africa. And I have to say some of my most memorable experiences continue to be my trips to Uganda and Rwanda. So fantastic part of the world, fantastic part of Africa, and I'm excited to be your virtual tour guide today. Just a little bit of housekeeping. We will do questions at the end. If you have questions, just enter them into your panel on your control panel there, and Hillary and I will field those questions at the end. And we're also recording this, so if you have to step away or joined us late, you'll be able to watch the webinar in its entirety on the Mountain Travel SOBEC's website at a later date. So we're going to start our tour just with a little bit of geographical orientation, always good, especially for us Americans who sometimes geography isn't our strongest suit, in particular in Africa, massive continent. We're going to focus in on what the safari industry has termed East Africa, and Uganda and Rwanda both fall into this part of the continent. Uganda, as you can see, located there, is bordered to the west by the Democratic Republic of Congo, to the north by South Sudan, Kenya to the east, and Rwanda to the south. Rwanda bordered by the DRC, Uganda, Burundi to the south, and Tanzania to the east. And also you can see there Lake Victoria, which is the largest lake in Africa, and actually the second largest lake by surface area in the world after Lake Superior. Lake Victoria, also famously known as the source of the Nile. Just a little bit of context for us in North America, as far as size goes, Uganda is roughly the size of Oregon, and Rwanda roughly the size of Maryland. So just some idea there. The funny thing about that is Uganda, while the size of Oregon, has over 1,100 different species of birds, and I think there's about 800 species of birds in the whole of North America. So you can see the incredible diversity of wildlife and of bird life in particular in this particular region. Despite the size of these countries and the variety of land and to explore, most of the safari tourism is actually focused around the far western part of Uganda and then south into Rwanda, along the Albertine Rift Valley and the spectacular mountain ranges there that border the Congo, the Ruwenzi Mountains as well as the Virunga volcanoes. And this trip, as you can see in the map there, that we do with Mountain Travel is focused entirely on that western part of the country, right along down the Albertine Rift and along the mountain ranges. It is by far the most spectacular part of the country. And of course, the reason we go there in particular is because this is the habitat of the last remaining mountain gorillas in the world, in both these two regions. So despite the fact that, as I mentioned earlier, Uganda sits on Lake Victoria, the only time you'll see Lake Victoria is upon arrival into Entebbe. Entebbe is the gateway, the only international airport in Uganda, and it's just next to the capital, which is a large city of almost 1.5 million people now, of 36 million Ugandans. A few facts, as you can see on the right-hand side there: Kigali, the capital of Rwanda, will be the departure of our safari. So the nice thing about this trip, beyond, of course, the exciting activities, is the fact that you get to get 2 different stamps in your passport and experience both Uganda and Rwanda. English is widely spoken in both countries. If you have any high school French, you can practice that a bit in Rwanda. As I mentioned, airports, you'd fly into Entebbe International and out of Kigali in Rwanda. A variety of air carriers now, all of the Middle Eastern airlines, in particular Qatar and Emirates, fly into Entebbe and out of Kigali. KLM is another great option for you, especially if you're with Delta and any of their mileage programs. They have a really convenient flights that come from Amsterdam into Kigali out of Entebbe, and the reverse works really well. Ethiopian Airways also now flies into both countries. So there's a lot of varieties. Ethiopian, if you're a Star Alliance member with United, that's a great option as well to get miles for your flights. Visas are required for both countries, and they now have to be purchased in advance. The nice thing that by going to 2 countries, you actually get a bit of a deal. Visas for each individual country, Uganda and Rwanda on their own, are $130. But we have, there's now a multi-country visa called the East Africa visa, which covers Kenya, Uganda, and Rwanda. And that is $100. You actually save $30 by doing the multi-country visa, which is a nice thing. But this has to be applied for in advance online. And of course, when you sign up for the trip, Mountain Travel will help you through that process. But it's very easy and simple thing to do. One thing to note, we won't go into a lot of health issues here. We can go through that in the questions section if you'd like. But one important thing is a yellow fever certificate, and inoculation obviously is now required for entry into both countries. And your passport must be valid for 6 months from your exit date of the country. So just make sure you have a lot of extra validity in your passport prior to traveling. So why would you visit Uganda and Rwanda? Of course, the mountain gorillas and being able to experience really what is a once-in-a-lifetime wildlife experience is the reason that most people give for visiting both countries. And frankly, that's enough, because it truly is an incredible experience to see these critically endangered primates in their natural habitats. And so if that's the only reason that you're visiting Uganda and Rwanda, that's certainly good enough. But beyond the gorillas, Uganda and Rwanda are really 2 of Africa's most diverse and incredibly dynamic destinations. And there's really a wide variety of activities for travelers. As you can see in the lower right-hand corner, there's Uganda is oftentimes forgotten as really one of Africa's greatest safari destinations, traditional safari destinations as well. There's a wide variety of game. 4 of the big 5 are seen in Queen Elizabeth National Park, which you'll visit on this itinerary. For active travelers, which I imagine if you're looking to travel with Mountain Travel Sobek, you probably enjoy being active. Obviously, Uganda and Rwanda fits that bill with the trekking that you can do to see not only the gorillas, but also the chimpanzees. But there's beautiful hikes throughout the country, and it's just a really stunningly beautiful place. As you can see in the lower right-hand corner, those are the Virunga volcanoes on the border of Rwanda and the DRC, and just jaw-droppingly beautiful place. In addition to your driving safaris that we do in Queen Elizabeth National Park, it also has one of Africa's iconic and probably best water safari destinations in the Kazinga Channel, which is located within Queen Elizabeth National Park. So really a diverse destination, as I said. You're doing trekking to see gorillas, you're in vehicles seeing fantastic game viewing in Queen Elizabeth, in boats along a really spectacular waterfront in Kazinga Channel. And then the driving, while there is a fair amount of driving in this itinerary, you're never at a loss for an incredible view out your window, whether it's something like these Virunga volcanoes or really beautiful pastoral rural scenes of Uganda. The other thing to keep in mind is both countries, in particular Uganda, see far fewer visitors than more well-known safari destinations like Tanzania or Kenya, or South Africa. So it's something that you really are going to experience the country without a whole lot of other tourists around and a whole lot of other vehicle traffic in your safari. Speaking of vehicles, because this is a driving safari, there are a number of drives that we do on this trip. Vehicles are critically important, and I think that that's something that really distinguishes classic Africa safaris, and one of the reasons why Mountain Travel and Classic have worked together for so long. The quality of our vehicles. The roads in Uganda can be rugged, and therefore you really need to have a comfortable and reliable vehicle. And we actually custom design all of our vehicles to really exacting standards, both for reliability, which is obviously number one, but also for comfort, which is a close number two to reliability. All of our vehicles have comfortable captain's chairs, bucket seats, each with its own window seat, large windows for great photography opportunities, and then pop tops, as you can see there in the lower right-hand corner, for great game viewing. They come equipped with a cooler box with drinks and picnic lunches if we're doing a longer drive, charging stations for camera batteries and cell phone batteries, as well as a little extras like wildlife guides, umbrellas if it happens to be during one of the few times that it rains in Uganda, bean bags for photographers, blankets if it gets chilly because we are at altitude in some places. Another feature of this mountain travel itinerary is the fact that it's capped at 6 guests, so you really do have a very intimate trip. You'll get to really know your guide as well, and that's Sula, who is the one of our guides and the guy that typically guides the mountain travel Sobek itineraries. He is a fantastic wildlife naturalist. His parents grew up in the Queen Elizabeth National Park area working for the park, so he's kind of grown up as a safari in the safari business. But that's the other thing about these. One of the features of a Uganda and a Rwanda driving itinerary is the fact that you develop this really strong bond with your guide because you're with him for 11 days. And we oftentimes actually have guests who cry upon departure when they leave the country and have to leave the guide. So there really is a fantastic bond that's built between the guests and your driver. And again, with only 6 guests, it really makes it a very intimate experience. A quick overview of the itinerary for mountain travel. The arrival day, as I said earlier, you arrive into Entebbe in Uganda. There's the airport code EBB if you're starting to search for flights already. The second day, we head straight off onto safari, driving to Kibale National Forest. And the prime reason for Kibale is for our first trekking and first active safari activity, which is going out to search for chimpanzees in Kibale National Forest. Day 4 and 5, we go down and spend almost 2 full days in Queen Elizabeth National Park in the northern part of the park, which is another great feature, having that extra day to really spend a lot of time on safari as well as doing the Kazinga Channel boat trip. And then another very nice feature of this trip is 2 days in the Ishasha region of Queen Elizabeth, which is the southern part, oftentimes left out of itineraries. It's where the tree climbing lions are found, which is a really unique feature and a very cool photograph to take. You'll see some pictures later. Day 8 is the longest drive of the trip, and that's from Queen Elizabeth through what we call the Switzerland of Africa, right along the Rwenzori Mountains into the Virunga Volcanoes, past Bwindi National Park in Uganda, across the border into Rwanda to the famous Volcanoes National Park, which is one of the mountain gorillas' remaining sanctuaries in the world. And then we have 2 days of gorilla trekking, so 2 separate gorilla treks, which is another nice feature. You get a chance to go and trek different families in 2 different days, and obviously this is a once in a lifetime experience, so you might as well make the most of it while you're coming this far. So doing 2 treks is really an excellent feature. And then day 11, we depart from Kigali, Rwanda, and there's your airport code as well. We'll go into a bit more detail as we go through this virtual tour right now. We start in Entebbe. Entebbe International Airport. As I said, I think the only international airport in Uganda. We stay at the Hotel Protea, which is literally 5 minutes from the airport. So a really nice international hotel. This is your one chance to experience Lake Victoria on this trip, as the hotel is located on a beautiful beachfront right on the lake. Nice pool there and some gardens as well. So depending on when you arrive, you might be able to enjoy the gardens and the pool and the beach as well of the lakefront hotel. You'll be met upon arrival after you come through customs by a mountain travel representative who will get you off to the hotel for the night. Day 2, we jump right into the safari, and as you can see in the map here, a little bit of a This is a map of Uganda. Here's Entebbe down on Lake Victoria, if you can see my cursor. And we set off west, heading due west to the Kibale National Forest area. Fort Portal is the gateway town to Kibale. It is a full day drive, about 6 hours. We stop for a picnic lunch en route, but it's a really beautiful drive, and it's your first foray into rural Uganda life. We're passing through beautiful villages, homesteads, lots of farms. It's amazing what seems to grow in Uganda. Everything seems to grow well. It's obviously an equatorial climate, so really fertile. It's in the Great Rift Valley as well, so really fertile soil and great weather for growing all kinds of crops. So the views out the window on these drives are spectacular. And as you get closer and closer to Fort Portal and Kibale, it just gets more beautiful. Honestly, I can say I don't know that I've ever seen more shades of green than on the drive to Kibale, and this is an example of that with this photo. Lush fields of green. There's tea plantations, especially as you get closer to Kibale, that just go on for what seem like endless rolling hills of these beautiful verdant fields. So a really beautiful drive on that first day into the safari. But really the reason for it is we're headed to Kibale, which is really the best place in Uganda, maybe in Africa, to trek for chimps. There are roughly 500 chimpanzees in Kibale National Forest. About 150 of them are habituated to humans, so that they allow you to be able to view them relatively close. But in addition, there's 12 other primate species in Kibale, which makes this park with the highest density of primate species in the entire continent. So for primate lovers, Kibale is definitely your gold star park, and it's a great way to begin the trip. A great way also to kind of get you ready for the gorilla trek that will come later, because chimp trekking tends to be quite a bit easier. There's not nearly as much elevation, as many hills. It's much more of a flatter experience. So it's a good way to kind of warm yourself up for the gorilla trekking coming a little bit later in the trip. On this itinerary, we trek either in the morning or in the afternoon. And typically it's the morning, but it just depends on the permits. There are a limited number of permits to check the chimps each day. And obviously Mountain Travel takes care of all of that ahead of time and reserve those permits for you. The group size is limited to 6 people per group. But oftentimes, as the groups have headed out to look for different groups of chimps, you can have those groups come together depending on where the chimps are found. Trekking can be challenging, and it can last from 5 minutes to get to a chimp or a family of chimps to several hours. But typically, you're out in the forest for 2 or 3 hours. And beyond the chimps, there's amazing bird life in Kibale, as well as I said, another 12 species of primates. So you'll have the chance to see quite a bit of other wildlife, in particular birds and primates, on this trip. Recommended definitely for those of you that are trekkers. Long sleeves, long pants, and layers are important. This is a rainforest, so it can, even when it's the dry season, it can be a little bit wet. It's humid, so it's good to have a variety of layers on. Obviously, hiking boots are important and critical for this trip, not only for the chimps but also the gorillas. Gaiters are a good idea, long socks, and lots and lots of water and some snacks as well, because it is warm. Bottom line, it's an adventure, and a really fantastic adventure. Something that, again, if it weren't for the gorillas and trekking the gorillas, it probably would be your highlight of your trip to Uganda. But again, this is just the first day on our safari, so it's a really great beginning to this incredible itinerary. And there you are. There's our closest living relative right there, a chimpanzee. So your chances of seeing these chimps are, I'm not going to guarantee it, but it's nearly a guarantee. As I said, there's about 150 of them that are habituated. The way it works, the same with the gorillas. The trackers go out early in the morning to find the chimp families, and the morning trek starts at about 8 a.m. from the headquarters of Kibale National Park. So after a couple of hours out in the forest, enjoying the atmosphere, enjoying the habitat, and of course taking pictures and spending some time communing with our closest living relative, we head off for a well-deserved local lunch at a gentleman's house named Tinka. And Tinka is a prominent community leader in the Bagodi area, which is the area around Kibale National Park. and he welcomes us into his home for a traditional Ugandan lunch where you get to sample, of course, ugali, which is the cornmeal staple diet for, you can see in my cursor there in the middle, staple diet throughout Africa, really. It's called ugali in Uganda and most of East Africa, and that's basically used like a fork to pick up all of your other lunch items on your plate. So Tinka takes us through what you're eating, where it comes from, the methods of preparation of the food, the crops that are planted to result in the lunch that you're eating. And he's just a really dynamic guy. He's traveled to the States, been involved with different zoos and tourism, and he's developed, he's one of the leaders of the Kibale Association for Rural and Environmental Development. It's a long mouthful. That not only is his lunch part of that organization, but also the Bigodi Wetland Sanctuary, which is what we'll do in the afternoon on this day. This is an association that they run this walk through Bigodi wetlands, and the money that's raised from these treks or these walks is goes to be used for community projects in the Bigodi region. So not only are you getting a great meal at Tinka's and then a really fantastic birding and primate walk in the afternoon, but you're also contributing to the well-being of the local people in this region. The Bigodi wetland is one of the best birding trails in Uganda, if not in Africa. There's a lot of incredible bird life here to see. So if you're a birder, this is another gold star for your itinerary. It also is a haven for I think about 5 different primate species. So black and white, red colobus monkeys, vervets, baboons. You'll see a lot of different primates on this walk as well. So today, this day is all about primates, from the chimpanzees through to the variety of different other species that you can see both in Kibale as well as in the Bigodi wetlands. And there's a black and white colobus monkey, actually. While you're staying in 2 nights in Kibale National Park, you're going to be staying at the Primate Safari Lodge, which is conveniently located inside the national park and right next to the park headquarters. So really great for doing those morning treks. You don't have to drive anywhere. You literally walk over to the park headquarters. And even better for those of you that are thinking of traveling next year or the year after, they've just refurbed and actually rebuilt their accommodations. They have 9 brand new luxury cottages that Mountain Travel utilizes. As you can see, really beautiful, spacious accommodations. Nice place to come and retire after working really hard, go see the chimps during the day. So you'll spend 2 nights here at the Primate Safari Lodge. And then we head off to Queen Elizabeth National Park. So heading down here again, down the Rwenzori Mountains into the Albertine Rift and to Queen Elizabeth National Park. It's about a 3-4 hour drive from Kibale to Queen Elizabeth, but it's a beautiful drive. You drive along the eastern length of the Rwenzori Mountains, and hopefully, if it's clear, you'll be able to see the mountains as well as some of the glaciated peaks of those mountains, of that mountain range. It's really a stunning place. Queen Elizabeth is probably one of Africa's most exceptional safari areas that very few people actually know about. Of course, you hear about Serengeti, the Masai Mara, Kruger National Park in South Africa, but Queen Elizabeth is right there up there with all of those parks. It's really a hidden gem of the safari parks in Africa, and it's something, again, you're coming to Uganda largely to see primates, but there's actually a tremendous safari safari park as part of this itinerary as well. You'll find 4 of the big 5 here in Queen Elizabeth National Park. The only one that you won't see is rhino, but you'll have elephants, leopard, lion, and buffalo, all of them in good numbers in this park. So this is where we're doing more of our traditional game drives, as well as being able to do night drives to see some of the nocturnal creatures, which is a great time to see leopard, as well as one of the best times to see lion, sometimes on the prowl for dinner. And another important feature, we've talked about it before, but you will not see a huge number of vehicles in this park. You'll really have a very exclusive experience. And again, you're in a small group with 6 already, but you're not going to have 5 to 10 vehicles crowded around a pride of lions when you're game viewing here. So it's a really nice exclusive experience that you don't get in some other parks in East Africa and Southern Africa as well. Queen Elizabeth is largely associated with grassy savanna open plains, which are a great habitat for a pride of lions. Here's our safari vehicle out on safari. You'll be spending the 4 days in Queen Elizabeth in this safari and doing a lot of that standing out through the pop top, looking at game, including a nice pride of lions here in the next slide, as you can see. So it's great for lions, in particular the northern part of the park, but this park is incredibly diverse. Within its boundaries, you have leafy rainforests, you've got dense swamps, natural volcanic crater lakes, and of course 2 lakes that are connected by the Kazinga Channel, which is one of the features of the park and what makes it really special. The Kazinga Channel is known for having some of the largest herds of pods of hippos, 30,000 strong, which is just mind-boggling to think about how many hippos we're talking about, plus crocs, elephant, buffalo, and incredible bird life as well. You can see a map here of where the Kazinga Channel is connecting Lake George with Lake Edward, and typically, if you look at my cursor, what the trip we do is actually just down here on the end of the channel, right along the Moya Peninsula here, and this is where you get really large groups of hippo as well as other game that come down to drink in the channel area, just out to the tip of the peninsula where Lake Edward begins. We take small boats out into the channel. There'll be 6 of you at the most in one of these boats, so it's a very private, exclusive experience again. And you're able to get up relatively close to the wildlife in a boat like this. You can see the hippos there and the buffalo. Also, lots and lots of elephants in this park, and they come down. This is one of the biggest sources of water for the herds of elephants and the other game to drink. So you do get nice herds of elephants and little babies there waving their trunks at you as you come by in the vehicle. There's an old buffalo bull, a bachelor. Looks like he's had a bit of a rough time digging in the soil. So you do see quite good herds of buffalo, even occasionally leopards and lion coming down to drink. One of the real features, though, of the Kazinga Channel is its bird life. It has in Queen Elizabeth there are 560 recorded species in the park itself, Kazinga being the place where many of them are concentrated because of the water, and a record of 296 bird species seen in one 24-hour period. So for any twitchers or birders out there, you'll know this Uganda really is probably the greatest birding destination in Africa, and the Kazinga Channel is really at the heart of that birding experience. In Queen Elizabeth, we'll stay 2 nights at the Jacana Lodge, which is located on this Uganda's largest crater lake, just south of the main safari areas within this forest here. Beautiful little crater lake. You actually, because of it being in a forest area, you get quite a few black and white colobus, monkeys, as well as baboons around the lodge. So, and again, great birding from the lodge itself. They also have a fantastic pool, which looks out over the lake. So again, a nice place to come and relax and enjoy some drinks and dinner after your day out on safari. From the northern part of Queen Elizabeth, where you'll spend 2 full days and where the Kazinga Channel is, then we head to the south to the Ishasha sector, which is a lesser visited part of the park, and that's relative, as I said. You're not going to see a whole lot of vehicles even in the north. But Ishasha is famous for its tree climbing lions, as you can see right there. There are a number of trees, and they actually have them mapped out where what they call the lion trees, where you have lions that come and spend hours up in the tree, just lounging around, looking out, eating some of the fruit on occasion. But it's really a nice feature and a unique thing of Ishasha. And we have 2 full days to explore the area. Beyond the lions, there's great game in Ishasha as well, really large herds of elephants, of buffalo. This is a photo I took the last time I was in Uganda. There's a hyena there. There's a really active hyena den. And then some of the endemic Ugandan kob, lots of big herds of plains game. So it's a very, very active and great wildlife viewing area, and an especially nice feature of this itinerary that you get to spend 2 full days down there on safari. Leopard as well. There's another photo that I took. So you can see leopard in Ishasha and in Queen Elizabeth, and we were lucky enough to catch one actually on the road down to Ishasha on this particular trip, and this beautiful leopard just seemed to be posing there for us in a beautiful tree right off the edge of the road. So you just never know when you might come across a surprise like a leopard in a tree when you're on safari. So always keep your eyes open. The Ishasha Wilderness Camp is where we stay on this mountain travel itinerary, and frankly, it's one of my favorite properties in Uganda, and oftentimes is one of the favorites from the mountain travel guests as well. It really has a very traditional safari feel to it. It's also very eco-friendly. You get a hot bucket shower, which is basically where they heat up hot water and add it to a bucket, and you get to stand under there and enjoy a hot water shower. They do have hot and cold running water, but it is very much kind of a back to basics camp, and it has a spectacular setting right along the riverside. And this is a photo I took on my last visit as well. As I woke up having tea and coffee delivered to my tent in the morning, I'm sitting there drinking coffee, and you can see right here where my cursor is, got a little visitor. An elephant bull decided to stroll on by the tents, and if I zoom in on that photo, there he is crossing the river, and just kind of munched along as he ate along the banks of the river on the other side across from camp. We basically spent the whole breakfast time watching this elephant bull as he ate his breakfast with us. So a really true safari feel to this property. Also known for exceptional food as well. So and a nice feature again that on this itinerary you get to spend 2 nights there. The following day, we head off on our tour of the Switzerland of Africa down to the, around Windy National Park into Rwanda, land of 1,000 hills, into the Virunga volcanoes, and to the famous Volcanoes National Park, which is one of the 2 remaining regions that have the endangered mountain gorillas left. There's the Virunga Mastiff, the Virunga volcanoes that borders Rwanda and the DRC, where approximately 480 of about 880 gorillas remain. And the population is growing at the last census, actually both in Windy in Uganda as well as in the Virungas, where the last census is showing an increasing population. And frankly, that's largely due to tourism. The protection of the gorillas has happened because people like you want to come and see them. And so there's a reason for them to be protected. So that's one of the big things, you can pat yourself on the back a little bit by going on a trip like this, because you are helping to protect one of the world's most critically endangered species by making this trip. As I said, you get to spend 2 days of trekking, so you have the opportunity to see 2 different gorilla families while you're in Rwanda. There are 7 habituated gorilla families, and there are 8 permits issued for each of those families. So every day there's only 56 people in the world that get to see the gorillas, and on this trip you can be one of those people. Just a few tips for trekking, and just to kind of give you an idea of what a typical gorilla trekking day is like. You start the day at about 7:30 a.m. at the park headquarters, where the gorilla family that you're going to go and track is assigned. So you're told, you're paired up with a guide, and off you go. Earlier in the morning, the trackers will have been out looking for the gorillas, identifying where they are and locating them, and then you continue a few hours later with your group of 8. Depending on the family, it can be several hours or up to 6 hours to get to where the gorillas are. Rwanda and the Volcanoes National Park tends to be slightly, some people say, an easier trekking location than in Windy in Uganda, just because the gorillas are largely all habituated in this area, and many of them are located relatively close to the park, the trailhead, the park entry gate. But there are other families, if you want to have a little bit more of a hardcore trek, that are located at a higher elevation and farther away. So it really depends on the group. And as I said, our guide will help to assign which family you'll be trekking on the day of your trek, depending on the level of fitness and how people are feeling, how energetic you are in that particular day. There's no guarantee that you're going to see gorillas. Just want to make that clear. But again, you have 2 days and 2 chances. And today, because there are such a number that are habituated and the trackers are out there all the time, looking for gorillas, it's a very, very good chance that you will see them. It's pretty rare that on a day you don't actually find the gorillas. Once you find the gorillas, you have an hour with them, and you need to savor that because, again, it's probably your once, or I guess in this case, twice in a lifetime experience to go and see the gorillas. You're supposed to stay about 20 feet away from the gorillas, but there are times where they come towards you, not aggressively, but especially the babies, very curiously. And sometimes it can be hard. You're having to move away and back away. If you are sick, gorillas can, the diseases that humans have, even the common cold, the gorillas can catch. So if you're sick of any sort, you're asked to not trek because that's obviously not a good thing if we're passing diseases off to the remaining 880 gorillas in the wild. It is at 5,500 feet is where the Virunga volcanoes are. So it is a high altitude trek, so keep that in mind. A few tips here for gorilla trekking. You definitely want to have strong boots with good tread and ankle support because you could be trekking up to 6 hours. I always recommend bringing guardian gloves or some sort of glove with some tacky gloves of some sort and gaiters due to the terrain. If you're having to climb up and down in the forest, holding onto vines and things, it's really nice to have gloves, and gaiters obviously keep a lot of dirt and muck out of your boots. Long sleeves and long pants, that's kind of obvious. Layers is important. A waterproof jacket with muted colors. Red is not a great idea for gorillas. Dress in layers, as I said, it can get really hot or really cold. You are at 5,500 feet, so depending on the weather, things can change quickly, so having lots of layers is important. Picnic lunches provided, lots of water. Again, you're at high altitude. Ziploc bags, waterproof dry bags for your cameras are really important. You may not take flash photography. That's something to keep in mind as well. And bringing some extra clothing, basic first aid, and a flashlight isn't a bad idea, although obviously our guide and the porters will also have first aid as well. Porters are available to hire, and they can take your bag and basically be your assistant. I know many of you, if you're mountain travel SOBEC travelers, you're probably pretty hardy hikers in some cases, and you may not think you want a porter. I highly recommend hiring them, not only because it's nice to have that additional help because the terrain can be pretty intense at times, but also because you're helping to contribute to the local community. By supporting a porter, you're helping to support their family, and at $20 per trek, it's really a small price to pay to have the extra help, and I think you'll probably be glad you did, but also to help support the local community. Some photos here as we go through of what it's like to be next to these amazing gorillas, and oftentimes, as I said, you can get pretty close. There's a silverback there, another large silverback. The families are, of course, the silverback is the dominant male of the group, and depending the size of the families can depend from small groups of 4 or 5 up to 15, 20, depending on how many females and how many babies there are in the gorilla family. In some cases in Rwanda, you have these more open spaces, so photography can be a little bit easier in Rwanda because the forest is less thick. You also have bamboo forests, which tend to be less thick than some of the other forested areas in Uganda as well. So this is a tremendous photo of a dominant male silverback. So people often say Rwanda is better for photography just because it's more open in places. But again, that really depends on which family you're going to trek to see. This is where you'll be staying for 2 nights in the Volcanoes area, Mountain Gorilla View Lodge, which is really well located, about 10-15 minutes from the park headquarters. And when it's clear, you have beautiful views of the Virunga volcanoes. Nice, comfortable rooms, fairly basic, but just a place to lay down and crash after you've had an extraordinary, once-in-a-lifetime trekking experience to see the gorillas. The following, day 10 after your last gorilla trek, we drive through the land of 1,000 hills, and you'll know on this drive to Kigali why they call it that. It's an absolutely beautiful place, similar to the drive on your first day to Kibale in Uganda. The drive to Kigali in Rwanda is also just verdant, rolling hills with all kinds of beautiful agricultural plantings, tea plantations as well, and it does have just a spectacular drive. And then you arrive into Kigali, Rwanda, which is one of Africa's cleanest cities, really well developed. You'll actually be very surprised at how how developed this city is, and it continues to be increasingly developed with more buildings happening all the time. And you'll spend your last night at the Kigali Serena, which is again kind of we book in this trip with more traditional international style hotels with pools and good internet access. And this is a great time to kind of to shower off the dust and just the excitement of the last 10 days on safari. Get in touch with people, post photos on Facebook. There is internet at most and Wi-Fi at most of the other accommodations, but it's not as reliable, obviously, as it will be in Kigali on your last day. So thank you for joining me on this virtual tour. I hope that you will now consider actually going in person and experiencing what I've conveyed to you in photographs and virtually today. Mountain Travel Sobek, as I said, is one of our best partners in North America, and they have a number of group departures in 2017, as you can see on your screen there. And the pricing for those trips. For an 11-day trip, it's a really competitive price. And Hillary, who was on the phone or online earlier, she is your Africa expert. Virginia, one of her colleagues, was also just in Uganda on one of the mountain travel trips, and she's also going to be the person taking care of you once you've booked the trip, answering lots of questions and helping you with your preparation for the trip. In addition to these group departures, Mountain Travel can also put together a private trip. If you'd rather not go with a group or take your family or a group of friends and do your own private trip, they can custom design a trip similar to this or add on other parts of Uganda or Rwanda. We didn't cover Murchison Falls National Park in the north of Uganda, which is another great safari destination. So there's a lot of other customization options you can do if you're interested in designing your own private trip. So let me take a breath here. Thank you for your attention. A little bit longer than I wanted to, but hopefully it was interesting. I am going to just pull out some questions here and try to answer those for you. If you have other questions, feel free to ask at this time, and we'll get those answered. Yeah, so this is a question about extensions. Given it's a great question. Given the long trip to get to Africa, 11 days, it doesn't seem like enough, which is true. So do you have other safaris that provide an extension to the trip? We can do an extension onto this trip itself. As I said, you can head up to Murchison Falls National Park in the northern part of Uganda. Obviously, Tanzania and Kenya are a flight away from either Kigali or from Entebbe in Uganda. So if you're interested in more safari or visiting some of Africa's iconic parks like the Serengeti or the Masai Mara in Kenya, those can be arranged as extensions or additions to this trip. It actually, from Kigali, you can fly on a direct flight down to Johannesburg if you wanted to go and experience Southern Africa as well, which Mountain Travel Sobek can also arrange for you. So there's a whole host of options for extensions, absolutely, and they can help put that together. Are there dates in the year that you should avoid? That's a great question. Typically, the rainy season, quote unquote, is in April and the early part of May. So that's when you get the afternoon thunderstorms. April tends to be the month where you get the most rain. That said, there really isn't. It doesn't impact your trip that much. We don't offer a trip in April, and that's largely for that reason, just because the chance of rain is higher. But the advantage to going in April or May, as well as November, usually, is that they occasionally will discount permits for the chimps in Kibale, so you'll save like $50 on your permits in Kibale. So you do save a little bit by going at the shoulder seasons. Let's see, any other questions here? Here's a really good one. How fit do I need to be to do the trekking? And this is a great question, and one that we get asked a lot. A moderate level of fitness is definitely required for, in particular, the gorilla trekking. But you don't have to be an Ironman triathlete by any means. As I said, there are a variety of different families, and some of them live closer to the park headquarters than others. So you'll have a shorter trip. Some of them live higher on the volcano than others. So if the group tends to be a little bit less energetic, let's say, or wants to have an easier time, we would tailor the family that you trek to based on that. But obviously you want to spend some time hiking and at the very least doing some stair climbing ahead of time to get in shape for this, because you do have 2 days of trekking with the gorillas as well as the chimp treks, which, like I said, there aren't as taxing, but they can be 2 or 3 hours, maybe a little bit more out hiking in the Kibale forest. So that said, they actually will take both in Rwanda and Uganda, you can actually be carried on a litter to see the gorillas. So they basically want to allow anybody in the world, regardless of fitness level or any disability, to be able to see these final remaining 880 gorillas. So we even take people that are unable to walk to go see the gorillas. So, but that said, again, a moderate level of fitness is really important. And because of the altitude at 5,000 feet, that alone does make it a little bit more challenging, unless you're from Colorado or something where you're used to hiking at altitude on a regular, or living at altitude on a regular basis. Any other questions out there? Just one question here about health and safety, malaria concerns, yellow fever. So it is a malarial area, both Uganda and Rwanda. We do recommend that you speak to a travel doctor and take a malaria prophylactics. It's important to do that regardless before any trip to Africa, regardless of where you're going. And yellow fever it's a very low risk country, Uganda, and Rwanda. Actually, I believe there's no risk at this point. But again, it is a requirement to be inoculated prior to the trip. So, and again, when you're booked on one of these trips, Virginia will be in contact with you about all of the requirements for your visas as well as for your health, and you'll want to plan to see a travel doctor well in advance. All right, I think, Hillary, unless you have any questions on your side, I think that's all we've got for today.
I think that was fantastic. We are good over here. Thank you all again for joining us today. If you have any more questions that just start picking at your brain in the coming days or weeks, please feel free to reach out to me. Again, Hillary, my phone number and email is up there on the screen in front of you. So I'm available Monday through Friday Pacific time, and look forward to chatting with you, and hopefully we see you all in Uganda and Rwanda really soon. Thank you, Tad.
Thanks, Hillary, and thanks everyone for joining me today. We'll look forward to welcoming you to Uganda and Rwanda next year. Take care.